So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the origins of this ceremony. It originated with the Buddha. And I found an article that Rev. Master Fuden had written called Moggallana and His Mother, and I'm just going to read this one section of it. The feeding of the hungry ghost ceremony is one of the oldest Buddhist festivals. Venerable Moggallana, one of the Buddha's foremost disciples, wished to help his deceased parents. He had a vision in which he saw that his mother had fallen into the realm of the hungry ghosts. Being without food or drink, she had become very thin. Moggallana immediately tried to give his mother food from his alms bowl, but as she tried to eat the food, it turned to charcoal. According to Buddhist belief, beings fall into the state of a hungry ghost because their deeds of greed have been very serious. Moggallana's mother tried to hide the food with her left hand, which was not good, when Moggallana offered her his alms bowl so that the other hungry ghosts could not share the food with her. This attitude is probably what caused her to fall into this pitiful state. It is said that when the hungry ghost tries to eat food, the food immediately turns into charcoal. When he or she tries to drink water, the water turns into fire. Filled with grief and tears, Moggallana went to the Buddha to ask his help. The Buddha explained to Moggallana that his mother was in this woeful state because her past offenses had been very great. He also told him that his mother could not be saved through Moggallana's individual effort alone. What was needed was the power and merit of the whole Sangha. The Buddha then advised Moggallana to offer food and other requisites to all members of the Sangha on the 15th day of the 7th month, the day when the monks were observing their confession meeting. Moggallana followed the Buddha's advice, and his mother was delivered from suffering in the state of a hungry ghost. Now, Reverend Master Kodo spoke with you about the preparation for this ceremony and the meaning of that, and I'd like to talk about the ceremony itself. The purpose of the ceremony is to help all beings who have died, and especially those who have died in distress, to find peace. Although it is called the feeding of the hungry ghost ceremony, it is for any beings in woeful states of existence. I have always liked this ceremony because it shows the selfless love and compassion that fills the universe. No one is rejected. Nothing is rejected. All is embraced. We do a lot of preparation and do whatever we can to make the ghosts or whatever shows up at the ceremony feel welcome. This ceremony shows the complete lack of judgment and all-embracing compassion of Buddhism, because no being, no matter how awful his or her deeds have been, is judged or turned away from, and is offered help. The celebrant starts by going up to our graveyard and inviting the ghosts to come to the ceremony. So it's symbolic in some ways, but we're inviting any ghosts, whatever they are, to come to the ceremony, not just the ghosts in our graveyard, which would be very small. We have all the windows and doors open so that the ghosts can enter easily. And we start with what we call a musical quats. And that is done with a signal gong, drum, and cymbals to get the ghost's attention. And I have to say it was very enthusiastic and loud this morning, so I think we probably did get their attention. I was one of them, so I can say that. The celebrant goes up to the altar and encourages the monks to partake of the food, which represents the food of the Dharma. So we entice the ghosts to the ceremony with all the lovely food we put on the altar, by welcoming them, by encouraging them to come, by getting their attention, but what we're really giving them is the Dharma. The celebrant asperges sprinkling of holy water in all directions to reassure the ghosts and all those whose names are read that they are immaculate. This reassurance helps counter the gloomy, despairing, dejected, and filthy attributes commonly ascribed to hungry ghosts. I got this from an article by Reverend Master Reverend Master Oswin. She then offers incense, thinking of the fragrance as the smell of lotus blossoms, which will entice the ghosts to give up their delusions. Or we might say it's the sweet smell of the Dharma. The celebrant tosses pretend paper money and coins into the air, and she really tossed a lot this morning it was all over the floor. And it's said that it's so that the ghosts can pay off their fines in hell, which of course is symbolic. It's just showing the great compassion of this ceremony. Then the 2 front rows of senior monks also go up to the altar to asperge with the wish that with reassuring the ghosts of their cleanness, their immaculacy, and the incense enticing them to find the Dharma. The ghosts need much reassurance, and we do everything we can to help them. The invocations that we sing during this ceremony are all dedicated to the Bodhisattva of compassion. We do need a bit of water. We do everything possible to make these beings feel welcome, to entice them to the ceremony, and then we give them what is most helpful, which I just said, which is the Dharma. We tell them that they are not unworthy, they are not unclean, they have Buddha nature. All beings are welcome, nothing is turned away from. All are embraced within the great compassion of the unborn. The Dharma is what allows these beings to turn their hearts around and be at peace. So we offer the Dharma, and when a being is ready to accept it, they accept the Dharma. And we do hope that whatever showed up this morning was able to accept the Dharma. Now you were all sent a PDF of the ceremonial booklet in which the Dharanis are written, and I'm just going to read a little bit of what the Dharanis mean because they're really lovely. Dharani for breaking down the gates of hell and opening the throats so that they can partake of the Dharma. I'm not going to read them all, but you can take a look at them. May all deeds of greed be quelled. May you be replete with blessings and wisdom. May all forms of ugliness be removed. May all be endowed with pleasing looks. May your bodies and minds be anointed, giving you joy and ease. May your throats be opened wide. Be satisfied with the food and drink of the Dharma. May your fear be utterly eradicated. May you be free from the state of a hungry ghost. Now, I think you've already probably talked about what a hungry ghost is, but I'm going to go, I'll give my own explanation. It may be a little different than what other people say. Those whose deeds of greed are very serious. They're constantly looking outside themselves so that they have lost touch with their own Buddha nature, because you have to look within to find Buddha nature. Very needy, so focused on oneself and what one thinks one needs that one loses compassion for others. So stuck in their own neediness and fear of not getting what they want. There's an insatiable greed that can never be satisfied. Greed can turn into hatred and delusion, so that the deeds become very serious. This is very extreme. This is the realm of the hungry ghost. Hungry ghosts suffer the torments of hunger because their bellies are immense, but their mouths only as big as the eye of a needle. The suffering is very great because they have an unsatiated hunger and thirst. And perhaps this depth of suffering is what is needed for the being to finally be ready to let go and find another way in the Dharma. And this is what we offer. And I'm going to be talking about hungry ghost karma. Those who fall into the realm of the hungry ghost remember that their hungry ghost karma is very, very serious. So if you feel that you might have some of this hungry ghost karma, which probably most of us have to some degree, it's very unlikely that you will fall into the realm of the hungry ghost. So you don't have to worry about that. What is the teaching of this ceremony and this retreat for us? We can see our interconnectedness with all life. We offer merit and loving kindness. We feel for the suffering of others. And in this world of ours, there is a lot of suffering, especially so these days. And we can allow our own hungry ghost karma to arise and be helped. There is something much bigger than ourselves and our karma going on here. When we open to what is painful and difficult, we are also opening to something greater than ourselves. The hungry ghosts and we can know peace. One of the beauties of the hungry ghost ceremony is that it shows us that nothing within ourselves needs to be turned away from or judged. We often have aspects of ourselves that we really do not want to look at, that we might be ashamed of. Nothing we have done is too awful that it cannot be embraced with compassion. Through this practice, we can see for ourselves how the law of karma, what we call the law of cause and effect, works. Our actions have results. When we break the precepts, we feel the negative results and our suffering is increased. We have certain tendencies, propensities, as a result of past life karma that we have inherited. And because these tendencies can feel so real, we think of them as ourselves. However, the power of training wears away these tendencies and shows us that they are not the true reality. These tendencies, these feelings, need to be looked at and worked on. What is hungry ghost karma? We probably all have aspects of hungry ghost karma, but not to the extent that those in the hungry ghost realm experience. It is the belief that we don't have what we need within. Excuse me. The fear of looking within, a feeling of neediness or unworthiness, that we need to get something from outside ourselves, perhaps someone's reassurance or turning outward towards things. My guess is that we all do this to some degree or other, and it's understandable. This is probably what we've been doing for many lifetimes. Turning away out of ignorance, and now we have turned back. Even though we have turned back and long for the unborn, we may not be able to do the practice wholeheartedly yet. We may hold back, perhaps out of feeling of unworthiness, inadequacy, and or not being able to sit with the difficult stuff. Also, habitual patterns, ways of looking at things, views about ourselves, others, the world, all the thoughts and feelings that go through our bodies and minds that we have believed for so long can be difficult to just let go of and change. So we need patience and loving kindness. And we too may reach a degree of suffering in that we see that nothing we do, nothing outside ourselves can fulfill us, can satiate our hunger, and then we hear and turn towards the Dharma. What a relief it is when we find Buddhism and know that how we feel is not our true nature. So, I have a strong connection to hungry ghost karma. I have felt this way a lot in the past. Unworthy, inadequate, needy, nothing bright within, no faith in myself. I used to cringe inside and judge myself harshly when I felt this neediness, and it could come up very strongly and be very uncomfortable, especially if I acted on it. I would sometimes turn towards food, towards anger, close myself up, or try to get someone to reassure me, boost me up. The greatest gift one of the monks gave me many years ago was to say no to my neediness and tell me I needed to believe in and trust in myself. At that point, I had to look within, even if I didn't feel like I had any faith, because there was nowhere left to go but within. So that's great compassion. It works in many ways. She had faith in my ability to do this. Everything that we do to try to feel better is a temporary placebo, because there isn't actually anything that we need. The neediness is a delusion. I didn't have much, if any, compassion towards this feeling of being a hungry ghost, but now I do. What helps hungry ghost karma? Well, I'll mention a few things. Trusting in the Dharma, the willingness to feel the greed, the inadequacy, the unworthiness, the jealousy, no matter how strong these feelings may be, without acting from them. We can't escape these feelings, which we may have acted on in the past, and I believe if we are just willing to be with the discomfort, with kindness, we are helping to cleanse that karma. So there's nothing wrong with these things arising. One time while I was doing a retreat at our Compassionate Friend Hermitage, this hungry ghost karma came on strongly. And for me, when it would come on strongly, it would be like this desperation of needing to get something. And instead of turning away or trying to fill myself up with something, I allowed myself to be with it. And after a while, it left and all was still. Just as we offer merit, accept and offer loving kindness to all beings who have shown up at the Hungry Ghost ceremonies, we can love and embrace all aspects of ourselves, including the feeling of neediness. Whatever is causing this feeling to arise needs our compassion. Another thing that can help with hungry ghost karma is just to be content with ourselves. Be content with our own propensities, our own difficulties, our own positive attributes, but just being content with who we are. We have everything that we need. I want to read, I found this special Sagaki issue of our journal from 2017, and you can actually find it on our website. Not on our website, on the OBC Journal website. If you go there and on the search, in the search place, put Sagaki, you'll find this issue of the journal, and it's got quite good articles in it. But I'm going to be reading a little bit from what Reverend Master Oswin wrote in his article. Reverend Master Jiyu often emphasized that the Bodhisattva vow for contemplative practice was the resolve to save all the beings in our own karmic stream. Compassion is essential in practice, but it needs to be coupled with wisdom which develops from meditation. I'm skipping around a bit. The feeding of the Hungry Ghost Festival ceremony is a reminder that we all need to ingest and take to heart the truth of the Dharma in order to bring an end to the dissatisfaction of life, what the Buddha called dukkha. Like all ceremonies, we turn the light within and see what teaching is being pointed to for our own practice. One is that through letting go of our attachments and aversions, we diminish and eventually dissolve dissatisfaction. craving, and longing and their attendant suffering. Because we have what we need and we're complete, we don't really need what we're craving, but we still have that feeling sometimes. A second is the necessity of opening our heart to all beings. With the Bodhisattva mind, we offer merit, acts of love and kindness with a generous heart. The act of offering is itself liberating. Through offering the merit of our practice to those in need, especially those in less fortunate states, we give our whole heart to enable the universe to realize its true nature.
So what I wanted to talk about today is really an extension of what Reverend Master Shiko was talking about. It's really, hearing the Buddhist teachings and putting them into practice. It's said that, the hungry ghosts, of course, we heard Reverend Master Shiko talking about this today. They have these enormous swollen abdomens and these tiny throats. And that when they try, to eat or drink, everything turns to fire or to charcoal. And when I hear this teaching, I think that in many ways it's actually not so different from the day-to-day training that we're all doing as Buddhist practitioners. How many times does it happen that we hear a teaching and doubt arises? In effect, we can't take the teaching in, or we hear a teaching and continue to make the same mistakes over and over. We know we should do something differently, but somehow, just can't. How many times do we buy something, thinking somehow that, this time, this thing will make us happy, or this person will make us happy, or this slice of cake or glass of wine will make us happy. This is the answer to my suffering, at least temporarily. We look and look for an answer to the craving and unsatisfactoriness that we experience in everyday life, but somehow aren't nourished by the Buddhist teachings. So today I'd like to address the questions, what stops us from hearing the Buddhist teachings and putting them into practice, and how can we train with this? So I think many of us will recognize that in the past, we've dealt with difficulties in our lives by taking refuge in pretty much everything except the three treasures. The list is endless and can include things, of course, like, food, alcohol and drugs, sex, books, work, the internet, shopping, gaming, gambling, exercise, even really wholesome things. Pretty much anything in our lives can be elevated or used as a means of refuge, a means of escape. Some of them, of course, can be much more damaging to ourselves and others. The reality is that once we begin down this road, it does become a bottomless pit, because no thing can satisfy that emptiness, can fill that hole. No amount of compliments or positive feedback, comforts, work, anything really will do the trick. And once we've heard about the three refuges of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and especially once we've formally taken these refuges, we still might find ourselves falling back into old habits, old patterns that have been useful to us in the past to cope. So, we still might binge watch a series on Netflix, or find that significant time has passed shopping on the internet. Where did the time go? To soothe the sense of dis-ease that is arising in our lives. Even in a monastery, you'd be surprised, even with all the things that we're not supposed to be doing, it's surprising what you can take refuge in besides the three treasures. Religious biographies, there's so many things actually. So it isn't a problem in itself that at home we watch a series, or we shop on the internet, or are in love with gourmet coffee, or even enjoy a piece of chocolate when we're feeling down. That's not the problem. But if these things become our first refuge, our first line of defense when things are hard, we may want to stop for a moment. If we keep running to these things over and over for comfort, and we expect to find peace of heart, I think we might be disappointed. As the scriptures say, if from your experience of the senses, basic truth you do not know, how can you ever find the path that certain is, no matter how far distant you may walk? So I know some of us are newer to the practice, and some of us may be long-term practitioners at this point. Regardless, I think it is a common experience to find ourselves making the same mistakes over and over in our training. You know, we might be struggling with some precepts in particular and can't seem to make headway. So maybe we hear a teaching, we want to put it into practice, and somehow, we can't seem to change. I think anger is a perfect example of this. We might have this aspiration to sit perfectly still and remain equanimous when anger arises, or when someone says something really hurtful to us. But the reality is that, maybe our fuse is just as short as ever. That feeling of going from 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds, it's really unbelievable to me at times. The things I still find irritating, even aggravating. The precept on killing is another good example. Part of me used to think, in the old days, I've got this precept down, I carefully take insects out of my room, out of the shower. When I find them in there, I'm a vegetarian, I don't use mouse traps. And then, we might see how the precepts, they telescope in the deeper meaning of the precepts. So if we're looking at this precept on killing, to give an example, if someone expresses an opinion that's completely the opposite of our views, I think this is quite relevant, especially in an election year. To give an example, and this view might even disgust or enrage us. Can we, in that moment, not turn away from that person, which is actually a subtler form of killing? I think the other thing that arises is that we might hear a teaching and think, oh, that's interesting, but it doesn't really apply to me. Or maybe even the arising of outright doubt. It's surprising how often, just as an example, I hear about a new rule here at the monastery, and I'm tempted to find a way to interpret the rule so that it doesn't really apply to me. I think another good example is my relationship to bowing. On the one hand, I love making bows. It's a wonderful expression of gratitude and reverence, and I don't know how I could do the practice without them. And then, there are moments when I do my best to avoid having to make extra bows. It can be really surprising. Bowing is central to our practice, but it's often dismissed as simply cultural baggage by many people. So, what is it that stops us from hearing the Buddhist teachings and putting them into practice? And how can we train with this? To a certain extent, I think that in many cases, we take refuge in our senses and in our anger. In the past, we've adopted many coping mechanisms to get us through difficult times, think distractions, work, etc. And the reality is that we have probably been applying these types of strategies for lifetimes. So when the going gets tough, our fallback is in these comfort-seeking behaviors. In order to make the 3 treasures our true refuge, in order to take this teaching fully on board, we have to be willing to sit within a certain measure of discomfort and apply a 3-pronged approach of precepts, meditation, and putting the teachings into practice. In essence, we need to start bringing these 3 aspects of the practice to all parts of our lives, and not just something that we do from time to time. If we want to shift our refuge to the 3 treasures, we start with the little things to practice for the bigger things. So, when little irritations and greeds arise, we do our best to sit still with these things as they come up. Maybe we take a deep breath, or recite a mantra, or put our hands in gasho, anything that helps us to focus on the important thing. In the introduction to the scripture of Brahma's Nut, it says, "Drops of water are minute, but they gradually fill a large container." converting the three poisons of greed, anger, and delusion requires a drop-by-drop approach. If we think that we can convert these things overnight and without diligent practice in our day-to-day existence, I think we're probably mistaken. It isn't glamorous, but we just work on letting go of our greed and anger as they arise, as well as our opinions and views, just one by one by one. So the Buddha taught that there are 5 major hindrances to making spiritual progress. These are 1, sensual desire, 2, ill will, 3, sloth and torpor, 4, restlessness and remorse, and 5, skeptical doubt. Though, I could probably talk about all 5 of these today, I will just address the 5th, skeptical doubt. Because I think that this is pretty common in our practice, that when we encounter a teaching that is completely different from our own experience, we question its validity. Or we might just pick and choose the teachings that suit us best and leave the rest behind. Reverend Master Ju used to suggest, this is what I have heard many times, that we just put these teachings on the back burner. I think that, the teaching here is that when we hear something that causes doubt to arise, not to reject the teaching outright, but, simply to put it on the back burner, allow it to be there, to simmer on a low heat. Because, sometimes we aren't ready to hear one of the teachings, and I think actually that's okay. As we continue to train, to do the practice, we may find that that teaching all of a sudden makes sense in a way that it didn't before, or that we can take it on board. Interestingly, in the sutras, the Buddha offers 6 things that are conducive to the abandonment of skeptical doubt. These are 1, knowledge of the Buddhist scriptures, 2, asking questions about them, 3, familiarity with the precepts, 4, firm conviction concerning the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, 5, noble friendship, and 6, suitable conversation. This sounds very much to me like being on retreat and home practice. So, I think if we're really having trouble putting some of the teachings into practice, or we find ourselves making the same mistakes over and over, I think that this is a really good opportunity to look at what it is that's getting in the way and perhaps what we're avoiding. In order to make progress in any area, I think we do really have to put our efforts into making a change. We have to want to change. If our time is spent constantly with work, with distractions, with things besides our practice, then there never seems to be time to fit the practice in. However, if we can make everything we do, an extension of our practice, just folding the laundry without watching a show, or just cooking a meal and making that, part of our meditation, any small effort we can make throughout the day will not be wasted. I think if we want to make a change, if we want to make the Buddhist truth one with ourselves, we have to start where we are. Sometimes it can seem like we never make any progress in the practice, but really there is no yardstick to measure ourselves against. We do the practice, and the practice works on us, often in unseen ways. And I think, when the mind comes up with judgments about our progress, we have to just simply trust that doing the practice wholeheartedly is enough. And I think if we're longing for transformative religious experiences, this also is not the answer, because even after an experience, we still have to work diligently on keeping the precepts. No one can actually keep them for us. In the end, I would say that, our practice is for the long haul. We have to put in the effort every day in the small things, and gradually the practice becomes indistinguishable from our own lives. Our life essentially becomes the practice. And when we find ourselves back in our old habits, behaving in our old ways, not putting the teachings into practice, or having difficulty with the teachings, we just come back to the basics. Are we finding time to meditate each day? Are we doing our best to keep the precepts and taking time to study them? Are we putting the teachings into practice, making the practice a priority in our lives? And lastly, are we going for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha? To end, I'd like to read a poem for you from the Denkoroku, from the chapter on Great Master Tozan Ryokai. Many of you will have seen this book. It's also available on the website. Truly, I should not seek for the truth from others, for then it will be far from me. Now I am going alone. Everywhere I am able to meet him. He is me now. I am not him. When we understand this, we are instantaneously with the truth.